about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go, let's be free with me. Be free. Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free.
Hello and good evening, and it's lovely to have so many of you join us this evening for some revision. We'll all join together for some revision for paper 1. Last week we were looking at the education part of paper 1, and if you haven't seen that, you can still find the video on YouTube. But tonight we're focusing on theory and methods, and I am joined as ever by Katie on my left. Hi, Katie.
Hello.
And Craig on my right. And
Hi,
I'm
Duncan.
I'm Duncan.
Sorry, I was just looking at all the love for Katie in the chat window there. You know.
Yeah. There were people
They
asking
missed you last week, Katie.
Yeah, I was gonna say there were people asking you where you were last week.
My mum and dad were away, so I had to, there we go. I don't live with my mum and dad. I'm not like your mum and dad, but I had to do all the childcare on my own. Triple shift. There we go.
Okay, so we are going to crack straight on with it. Do you think? Should we get straight on with it? If you're watching live, join in on the chat window with some of these activities. If you're watching it a bit later on, obviously can't do that, but you might be able to pause your video and join in with some of the things that way. I will also try and keep an eye out for questions and comments that we can try and discuss either at the end or when, if there's an appropriate moment during. Okay, I'm going to head to the presentation and let's see what we've got first. I think with Craig first of all for a connection spinner activity.
Okay, thank you, Duncan. This activity, we're going to look at some of the ideas that you might need to discuss when we're doing the methods in context questions. So last week we did education. Now we're going to look a little bit at methods in context. On this connection spinner, we're going to give you a topic and we're going to give you a research method. So the topic is material deprivation. And what we're going to do is we're going to spin the spinner and see where it lands. And we'll want you to identify some of the strengths and limitations of using that method to investigate material deprivation. So we've got 6 methods around there: web questionnaires, official statistics, unstructured interview, self-completion questionnaires, participant observation, and field experiments. Just Habs, are we doing more revision bass leading up to the exam? We are for paper 2 and paper 3. So yeah, this might be our last one for paper 1, but we're doing them for paper 2 and paper 3. Let's spin the spinner and get on with our first activity. So using which method?
Ooh.
Okay, can we have a strength or limitation of using unstructured interviews to investigate material deprivation? Now, of course, we've got to remember to think about the topic and think about the people that we're researching when we're doing the methods in context question, as well as just the strengths or limitations of an unstructured interview. Okay, so I've got some people saying allow for rapport. Okay, why would that be useful in material deprivation? People might not be honest. Why might they not be honest with material deprivation? This is the kind of thing that we need here. Strength can gain for staying due to there being open questions. Okay, limitation. They may not be comfortable speaking with it. Why? What is it about the topic that means they might not be comfortable? Deeper responses from participants. Lots of people giving me strengths and limitations of unstructured interviews. Does somebody like diet and health may cause ill health? Okay, that's about material deprivation generally. Why might an unstructured interview be useful in investigating that?
I have seen one which was about material deprivation might be a sensitive topic, and therefore
excellent. Yeah, Annie. I think it's got Annie Franklin there. Maybe is a sensitive topic. Harder to access the group because they may be absent due to ill health. Okay, that's a good one. We probably need that to be a bit more specific to unstructured interviews in there. Rapport built, so working class may be more comfortable in answering. Okay, that's a good one, Rania. May not be comfortable speaking about material deprivation due to financial issues. That's a good one, AK, as well. But
we also got may feel
thick and fast.
We've also got may feel more comfortable, to be honest, as it allows the interviewer to be sensitive, and so might be more comfortable in an unstructured interview than in other types of methods.
Okay. Students may give vague answers because they're embarrassed. Again, sort of just develop that point. So, like I say, why might they be embarrassed? They might be embarrassed financial situation, and other things there. There's lots more responses coming through. There's some really good ones. Yeah. Now that we've kind of got the idea, sort of like how it goes, let's see what we put.
Okay.
And again, we've gone with you. So, like the discussion of income may be sensitive. So the idea that sort of like because we're talking about material deprivation, people may be sensitive. You can develop a rapport with them, and that may make them feel more at ease. We may also find, because it's material deprivation, that we have more volunteers from middle class backgrounds. They may be more willing to talk about their income because there's less of a stigma attached to it. As Daisy's just put there, limitation may be honest. Maybe honest not to talk about it because stigma surrounding poverty. Some really good response. May not know about the parental income. That's a good one as well. Chances of the researcher being in a situation of material deprivation is slim, so the chances of rapport is slim. That's the idea of status differences between the researcher and those who might have deprivation is a really good one as well. If they're material deprived, they may be underachievement, therefore really shouldn't be taking it out to do interviews. Okay,
that might be. I think they mean like if it's not a good use of their time, they'd be better off revising or doing some some schoolwork.
Okay, so the impacts on sort of like the actual students themselves. Yeah. Okay, some really good responses there. Let's have another go, and let's throw a different method in here. Again, we're looking at material deprivation. Let's see another method that we might be able to use. How long is the live? Roughly, it's about 45 minutes, isn't it?
We'll see. How long's a piece of string?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. Official statistics. What might be an issue, a strength or limitation of investigating material deprivation with official statistics? Okay.
There were still some really good ones coming through from the last one. An next one about the schools not being able to provide data on who's materially deprived, so it might be a problem to get a representative sample, etc.
I love it. Anya seems to have sort of like a priorities there. City is on soon. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff. Right. City Real Madrid is an 8 o'clock kickoff. You're only missing like Micah Richards and Jamie Carragher chatting. so don't worry. Right, okay, so dark figures, dark shadows, can't discover people's experience, it lacks validity, strength, working class less likely to provide data. Think about how we might measure material deprivation.
How do we
That
find
might
out
be
that?
something to look at there. Cannot discover the true meanings, interpretivists will reject it. Okay, again, these are really good limitations of official statistics. Let's apply it to material deprivation. Not all students eligible for free school meals. That one went through so fast I didn't actually see what the rest of it said.
Yeah. So if that was the measure that you were using, it might include, you might miss out on some people with material deprivation because some people don't claim it because of stigma, etc. And things like that.
Just as I was looking for it, official statistics may not gain detail on what students' experiences are material deprivation and the consequences they may have on this education. It will just show us that the materially deprived students may underachieve, but it won't tell us why. That's it's a good one. Advantage: reliable, representative, low in validity, dark figures. Okay,
but link it to material deprivation.
Yeah, defining material deprivation empirically. That is a really nice one. How do we define deprivation? It's very, very difficult to define deprivation, even with things like free school meals. There'll be many people who don't receive free school meals who may be in a deprived situation.
What's a good term we could use? What's a good term we could use for defining something in a way we can measure it?
Gives it O.
Someone did it yet?
Yeah, very good. Measured by free school meaning, it'll be. They're going through so fast. Interpreters will argue it doesn't focus on interaction. Interpreters don't like them. Meanings change all the time, so it may not be accurate. And I think that is another good one as well, because we've seen that with child poverty figures, how the measurements change.
A few people have spotted operationalizing now. Well done. Few names there. Well done.
Mia said it. Yeah.
It's difficult to operationalize those. Let's see what I went with. I think I went with something very similar. The issues with operationalizing deprivation. How might we do that? Operationalize means to make it measurable, Mia. Okay, so how do we measure poverty? How do we measure material deprivation? And in official statistics, it's difficult to do that, and that's one of the disadvantages. Yeah. Hello, Sina. It's just come in and said hello, so hello. Okay, let's move on to our next activity then with...
Okay, so we have got a little categorize activity now, and still on methods. You can sometimes, in the 10 mark question that you get on paper 1, you could potentially get a question along the lines of, can you give practical disadvantages, outline and explain 2 practical disadvantages of a method, or 2 ethical advantages, for example. And therefore it's good to be able to identify features or issues that come under those headings. There are a few where, depending on how you develop it, they could potentially come under more than one. But what we've got here are some features or issues with research, nice and general, any type of research. Some of them obviously more relevant to some methods than others. And I want you to try and put them under either practical, ethical, or theoretical. Some of you are already doing it very well. I'm seeing lots of good answers already flying through, but we'll have the timer anyway and see what we come up with by the end of the timer. Here we go.
It's
got the nice dramatic music.
It's always good when people have completed the activity before we've explained it.
Okay, so lots of good answers there. A few where I would possibly disagree, and so we can have a little discussion about where you might put it in one box or another. A couple of questions though. So before we look at the answers, I'll try and pick up some of the questions. How would you define theoretical? So an issue that has something to do with theory. So it might be why positivists or interpretivists would prefer it, or indeed why feminists, Marxists, or etc. might prefer a method or like it or not. Or it might be aspects or problems with the method that impacts on theoretical issues. So things like validity, for example, is the method valid or not, would be a theoretical issue. I've had a few people asking what's meant by going native. It's a very old-fashioned sort of term, but it is one you'll see in some of the textbooks, etc. But it means lacking objectivity. So particularly in cases with observations where a researcher might take on the values of the group that they're observing, and therefore not be objective. Let's have a look at what I put. And then, as I say, a lot of you went with the same ones. But I did see a few differences. So practical, it's all the stuff that's, logistical type issues. So time consuming, cheap. Also that issue of getting in, staying in, getting out, which is for observations. Access is a practical issue. Okay. Hard to say. So is going native basically being objective? No, the opposite. So going native would be being subjective, like losing your objectivity. Yeah. Ethical issues here, I've gone with deception and anonymity. And for theoretical ones, gone with reliability, and if validity had been there, that would have been the same. Verstehen, etc., could have been in there. Going native, because that issue about objectivity goes into issues about values and value freedom and objectivity, so whether positivists or interpretists would prefer this method. And then the Hawthorne effect. I saw quite a few people putting Hawthorne effect under ethics, and it's not really an ethical issue, Hawthorne effect. It's the fact that it impacts the validity of the research. Yeah, that if people don't behave as they would naturally because they're being observed, then what you're seeing isn't really what would normally happen. So that would be a theoretical issue. Lots of questions coming up.
One. So it's just always an interesting one, because obviously it's sort of like lots of students may think that sort of like Hawthorne effect, because we're deceiving participants, is an ethical issue. It's more the theoretical idea that sort of like it will impact on validity. Mm-hmm. Sorry, because we're not deceiving. That's the link that people make, and that's possibly why they do that.
Yes. So being overt rather than covert might well be an ethical issue because of lack, but that would be the issue. There would be the lack of deception rather than then the problem with doing it that way. It's great that some of you are answering your own questions.
Each other's,
yeah. I was highlighting a few things to like pick up some questions there, like what does Verstehen mean, and where would representativeness come on that thing, and you're all answering it for you. Someone saying who came up with the Hawthorne effect, and people have answered that as well. So do keep an eye on what's happening in the chat window, because you're all answering each other's questions very, very nicely. So that's well done. If I've missed any really important questions there, I apologise. I think someone said, is there a sociologist or a study we could link to the idea of going native? I'm just trying to think.
It came out of a lot. I was thinking a lot of it came out as well out of sort of anthropology, wasn't it? The start of, which obviously don't want to confuse students around that. No. I'm trying to think of some good ones.
I think sometimes people might have suggested maybe Venkatesh in his gang leader for a day might have taken on some of the values of the gang.
One of the studies into
Liam said the same one. Well done.
Was it canteen culture? Reiner. Lost objectivity. Was it Reiner or was it Waddington? There was one of the ones that was into the police, and they started to lose their objectivity.
I thought it was Waddington, but don't quote me on that.
Was it Waddington?
One.
Yeah.
Waddington had police officers on the observation team, didn't they? It was
and he started
partly funded by the police.
Yeah, he started to lose his objectivity. There is another one about losing. It's largely about losing objectivity. It was White, wasn't it? It started out as a non-participating observer, and then became a non-observing participant. In Street Corner Society, it was dealing drugs. It was in the 1920s, 30s.
Just going to pose a question came up. I thought I'd stick it on the screen. I'm not singling you out for this, but do we need studies for methods questions? My teacher said we didn't. So in methods in context questions, you don't really need them unless there was something really, really specific. What would you say, either of you? I'd have thought in those 10 markers on methods, they can be quite a good way of doing some application if you can demonstrate a strength or a limitation through an example, that can be quite good, can't it?
I mean, the
d-
key thing. Oh, go for it.
No,
I was
sorry,
to say,
Katie.
I was to say the key thing with any sort of study, it's the application rather than getting.
Yeah.
I think it's particularly careful with the 10 markers where you're so tight for time, not to go into description of what the study is about. Like obviously, Craig was enlightening us about different studies. It's if you're using it, it's to prove a point. But if it's going into a bit of a distraction, leave it out. Basically, there's a lot to do in that sort of 10 marker. So yes, it can enhance the answer if it's applied.
Yeah, I would agree with what you've both said completely.
Yeah.
I would say that.
Okay, going to hand over to Katie now for another connection spinner, but this time about theory.
Yeah, it's not weird. I mean, it's a connection spinner. It's probably more like what do you know really more than anything. So it's about the theory and lots of little debates. And you should cover lots of debates with regards to society, and that would have gone all the way through your whole course, but specialised in it. So let's see. What we're going to do is think about, for evidence in society, is there any of these things, and what key concepts might you link to this, or studies, or anything you can think of. So, Duncan, you ready to spin that wheel? Have you got your finger on that button?
I can spin the wheel. Shall we see where it
goes?
Go
for it. Let's go. Some nice debates there. Consensus versus conflict, structure versus action. Where is it going to go? Control. Oh, just on the cusp of structure.
I felt like Michael McIntyre there.
So tell me, what do you know? In society, there is structure. What would you think of if this was an exam, and this was there? I put a 5 on structure.
Well, hey, you'd have done well, Tom. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. So what are you thinking of? What theories are you thinking of? What theories are classed as structural theories? What concepts might you use as evidence for structure? So we've got function straight away, organic analogy. Let's get some answers down. Well, a lot of functionalism, yeah? And other structural theories and any concepts you might relate to functionalism.
I just want to quickly interject because I noticed a bit of discussion in the chat window about isn't this more for paper 3? Your 10 marker at the end of paper 1 could be on any aspect of theory and methods. So it might be a question on methods like the ones we were thinking about in the last activity, but it could be a 10 marker on structure and action or conflict or consensus or a particular perspective. So you haven't got a 20 marker on that in this paper. That's paper 3, but you could get any of this stuff in a 10 marker on paper 1.
Yeah, definitely. And also, it's worth saying, I know we're going to miss out some of these answers, but I've been sort of recording them mentally in my head, is they are called themes, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So I will, across all your papers. So I will come back to this in a minute. So we've got role allocation example. And again, the key is explaining how that creates like a structure in society, or how does it reinforce? We've got social solidarity, we've got Duncan and Alpha there in the same sentence. I mean, they would never have thought that. Hold on to the idea of Goffman's dramaturgical model. Not necessarily an example of structure, but maybe it's how you're using that. Maybe it's in the form of evaluation. Capitalism, is the structure. Obviously, the social class structure. We've got an OMG there. Ideological state for race, again, the way to reinforce structure. You've got the bourgeoisie, proletariat. I think we saw some other sort of functionalist ideas there. Class consciousness. So lots of ideas and concepts. So sort of knowing your structure. Oh, someone said superstructure, and base, as well.
Meta narratives is in there too.
Oh yeah, well, you've I didn't see that
one. Patriarchy, dominant
ideology. Fantastic. Yeah. Okay.
Macro sociology.
Macro.
Davison Moore. Role allocation.
Fantastic. And we've got an example of how that might work. And the key thing is, as you said, as Liam has put, is explaining how that creates the structure and the structural theories. I've put a couple there. They're not all of them. I mean, you've written a lot more. You've also put some sort of feminist arguments in there as well. The macro sociology is the big picture based. It's a relationship between structure, society, but also into your methods as well. So if you're believing structure, you would take more positive methods and therefore look at the bigger picture. sometimes old school will be like top down, sometimes big sort of picture, sometimes other words that other teachers might have used. So the micro is the opposite, is looking at sort of bottom up, sometimes referred to using qualitative methods. Micro is individuals. Fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come
someone
back
asking, is this business? It's not. No, there is a business one on. Do you have a look?
Feminism you could have had. Yeah, you could have had feminism as well. Feminism is a funny one. I don't know if it is a theory. Obviously, they see things as structure, but they use quite a lot of qualitative methods. They sort of have their feet in both paths.
Similar with neo-Marxism. Someone asked a question: is a neo-Marxist structuralist? They are, but similarly, often neo-Marxists are more likely to use kind of sort of more interpretivist methods, perhaps.
And as Bethany said, feminists would also look at conflicts. So these are sort of core themes. Jess, as Duncan's rightly said, neo-Marxists are structural, but sometimes use qualitative interpretive methods. So should we do the next one, and then I'll have a little bit of a summary. Let's see where it's going to go. Spin that wheel, Duncan.
Where will it land?
Who would have thought? Action. Okay, so we started to allude to some of those. I think someone earlier mentioned Goffman and the dramaturgical model. When you think of action, what keywords, theories, concepts might you think is the sort of counter argument to structure?
It's a lot.
Duncan, when I thought of action, is that the answer, or is it just?
It might be.
I don't know. It might be. Need, looking glass self. I always want to say self-looking glass, but it's looking glass self. Really, someone there does cultural identity, I think, got symbolic interactionism. Don't get worried so much. A lot of people would hear it as interactionism, symbolic interactionism. I say tomato, you say tomato.
Phenomenology.
Lots there. Weber, I think I've said that already, so there's quite a lot there.
Oh, Phoebe's gone with loads there, hasn't she? Look at that, impression management.
Impression management.
Dramaturgical model. Very good.
Me and I, a bit of Mead. There we go. Level of meaning, excellent. So loads there. I've only put a few down, so just because the boxes are too small, basically, not because of any other reason.
Maya or Mia's coming with what I reckon you're going to talk about in a minute, I suspect.
Well, I wasn't actually.
Oh, you're not?
No, I wasn't, but I can do. Just to bring people out at this stage.
Yeah,
what
true.
I was going to say was the reason. I guess there is the 10 marker in paper one, and that's what we're preparing for today. But it's also worth noting that these are constant themes throughout the whole of all your papers. So all the things that are up there, consensus, conflict, structure versus action, social control versus social order, they are in every single question, particularly in your theory questions. So if you're thinking about education paper and you're thinking about the function of education, one of those functions would be either to allow for structure. You think about action, you think about sort of your subcultures and where that comes in education and all the other optional topics. So they're constant themes. I hate social action. I quite like it personally. I don't know if you don't like it theoretically. I like the idea of agency, but there
are a lot of people asking what it means, so probably it's a good time to sort of nip in with that. So we've mentioned the macro, micro, structure, action, very similar concepts. So action is, as Katie was just saying there, it's about agencies. This debate is really to what extent people act based on their own agency. They can choose how they act, or to what extent we're kind of driven by social forces beyond our control, so our class or our gender or our ethnicity, for example. And social action theories tend towards the individuals are, make decisions for themselves. They have agency. They can
basically
do that.
Yeah, and it's like, you think about things like, obviously, I think a nice way to think about the subcultural theory when you look at education, that would be a nice way of sort of deviant subculture, for argument's sake, or anti-school subculture, get some agency, a response to the education system. It would be for them to get some sort of feeling of controlling that situation. It might be the case that they end up self-fulfilling that, but yeah, it's that idea. I will mention just structuration. It's just a sort of middle ground between both of those. So that structure needs action to make change to society, and action needs structure. So there's a sort of middle ground argument. But don't over worry yourself about that. Sort of just you're hoping that AQA will be nice to you around this.
I've been favoriting a few questions that we'll try and come back to later, especially ones where I've seen a few of people asking the same thing. So don't worry if we haven't answered it immediately. It might be that I've favorited it to come back to at the end. We've got a few bubble quiz questions now. So these are about general perspectives, sociological perspectives, which again you could get in your 10-mark question. It could be like 2 problems with Marxism, for example, two criticisms of Marxism or something like that. So I'm going to show you some sociologists, and it's really what perspective they're in. So which of these sociologists are Marxists or neo-Marxists? Now, it can be none of them, it could be all of them, it could be any number in between. So if you can just tell me the letters of any that you consider to be, or that you would think were Marxists or neo-Marxists. Had some correct answers already. Well done. Give you other people a minute to type people in. Well done. Yeah, absolutely. A and D, Gramsci and Althusser. A couple of people going for C. Becker was an interactionist. I can see why some people might think he had sort of Marxian, because obviously we do talk about him in relation to social class. And a couple of people have gone for Weber. He was definitely not a Marxist or a neo-Marxist. Weberianism, very different. But again, sometimes with how he comes up in beliefs, it sometimes confuses people. He might be a neo-Marxist, but he definitely wasn't. Yeah, he was always talked about debating Marx's ghost. So no, Weber definitely not a Marxist. Habs. Okay. Next one. Which of these sociologists are considered functionalists? So again, it might be none of them, might be all of them, could be anywhere in between. It's possible some of these names you haven't come across, but I'd thought most of them you probably have.
You might not know Wilmot and Young if you haven't done
if you
families.
don't do families. Yeah, that's the one which you might not. Yeah. So I'm seeing
the others should come up in your core option in core modules.
Ruby's saying all of them. Most other people are picking on specific ones, but Ruby is correct. It is all of them. Yeah.
Well done.
Consider them to be functionalists, so well done. If you didn't know Wilmot and Young, because perhaps you don't do families, for example, don't worry about that. And obviously you wouldn't be talking about families in paper 1, so if you've forgotten about them, yeah. But you can, of course, bring them into a discussion about functionalism potentially. Okay. Next one. When I get onto the right bit. Which of these sociologists are feminists? Again, might be none of them. Yeah. Don't worry, Elisa, if you don't know Wilmot and Young, they talk about symmetrical families. So the few people answering the questions in the chat window there. Well done. So I've seen Bella said A and C. Some other people have gone A, B, and C. Some people have gone A and D. Some people saying all of them. Those of you saying A and C are correct. Yeah, Anne Oakley, Fran Ansley are feminists. I included the other two actually slightly naughtily, but it's just sometimes people think if people write about gender, then perhaps they're a feminist because they've written about gender. Pollack was anything but a feminist. Quite actually pretty misogynistic when you read what Pollack talks about. Gershony talks about gender and changing. It kind of fits in. We sort of talk about him in that kind of March of Progress thing about, again, he comes under families, so you might not have encountered him if you're not a families person. But he wasn't. Yeah, he wouldn't consider himself to be a feminist. Okay.
Gershon is usually associated with the concepts of what's called lagged adaptation, which is a really, really useful concept. It suggests that in families, well, it can be in education as well, but you're more likely to use it in family. It's the idea that that males haven't quite kept up with the social changes that females have. So in other words, males are still lagging behind, usually applied to things like why men aren't doing as much housework as women. Yeah. They're doing more, but they're not quite doing as much.
Yeah.
It's males have progressed slower, according to Gershony.
But his research was very much quantitative data about what people are doing at certain times and things. It wasn't about trying to liberate women or anything. Okay, which of these sociologists are interactionists? So, no, someone says Pollock liberation thesis. No, he's not. No, he was chivalry
Adler.
thesis. Yeah.
And the master bender, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we've got, what have we got here?
Are the Coens brothers?
Oh, yeah.
No.
The ones that make films are. The ones
It's not the Coen brothers. It's not the Big Lebowski. Or
no. Can I just make a point? And I think it's worth noting. A lot of people going, "Oh, this isn't. Is this? I thought we were doing paper 1." Remember, for the methods question, it's not a methods question about crime.
Education. No,
education
or about
crime.
education.
Yeah, or crime, like either one. So on paper 3 and paper 1, you can use anything. So for anything you've been taught across the 2 years, that last question isn't the 20 marker we're talking about, but the last 10 marker, you can use anything. And I think a lot of people say not.
Yeah, so if you've got a question on interactionism, it's useful to know some interactionists. It doesn't matter which topic you bring them from. And quite a lot of people spotting, Goffman, a lot of people spotted Goffman. Stan Cohen also with the Folk Devils and Moral Panics. People say no Hall from Crime. Some of you might know from media as well, depending on what other topic you do, but certainly from crime. He was a neo-Marxist. The reason I put him there was that obviously it does use kind of interpretivist type methods. And Albert Cohen's a functionalist, and I just put him there for Cohen confusion. Which, and if in doubt, just put Cohen, and that's fine. Okay, and someone said, well, didn't Hall talk about moral panics? He absolutely did, but he talks about it from a Marxist perspective rather than an interactionist one. Okay, and the last one, which of these sociologists come from the New Right? Remember, it could be none of them, could be all of them, could be any point in between. What's the difference between the two Cohens? So Stan Cohen talks about moral panics and folk devils. He's an interactionist from South Africa. Albert Cohen wrote about status frustration and criminal subcultures. And was a functionalist. Most people going with none on this last one, and you will be absolutely right. None of those are from the New Right. Anyone want to type in a couple of New Right people into the chat window who we could have used instead?
Seen a few people putting stuff through. So I've seen a few people say Murray in there.
Absolutely, Murray would be a good one. Well done. Okay, Murray's popular. Yeah. Murray's popular, absolutely. Well, popular in terms of being a good choice for a New Right person. Absolutely.
He'd be popular at a conservative conference, wouldn't he? You know what I mean?
Chubb and Moe, absolutely. And just Monsieur, certainly sort of that way out. Okay, I'm gonna.
I think there's been a definite sort of like a turn of the tide in the recent report. We'll just leave it there. Yeah. Okay, so this one I'm going to do again. Just a reminder. So this is sort of your potentially a 10 marker on the sort of debate: is sociology a science or not? And I'm sensing the glee in the chat about these two ones that I'm doing. One about structure versus action, and the second one was, can sociology be a science or not? So quick categorise. Theresa May. So can you sort them? Obviously, just put the numbers. Which ones do you think say science or would be associated with sociology be a science, and which ones not? Off you go. But I think we've got a little bit of music.
Yeah, we have got a timer. Yeah, sorry, I'll set the timer off. Oh, some dramatic music. Someone's asked, what does 6 mean? Value laden. I tell you what, we'll explain it at the end, just because it's easier to. But it's kind of the opposite of value free. I'll give you that much.
So we've got some answers coming through. I'm just trying to check them against them. So, not science. there's lots of numbers and they're flashing so quickly. Science 2. Excellent, some good answers.
Yeah.
Wow, is all I'm going to say. That was good. But people said they don't like this topic.
Yeah,
you're doing really well at answer it. So I'm impressed. I think most people look like they've got this right. So should we have a little look and then we'll talk about value laden in a minute. If you've got it in that order, which I think most people did, looking at the numbers, obviously science with the idea it's reliable, it's associated with quantitative research, social facts, value-free, positivism, I haven't put that on there, but obviously, again, just run out of room. And then not a science, value-laden, qualitative, report, social construct, obviously interpretivism as well. So, there's lots of other concepts that you could put in. So as Duncan said, value-laden is literally the opposite of value-free. It's the idea of being subjective, whereas value-free is the idea of being objective, potentially, if those words a little bit mean a bit more to you. So hopefully that does.
So it's very much talking about the sociologist's values, isn't it? What the sociologist believes. To what extent does that impact the research?
When they're carrying out the research, the choice of method they do, also the way they analyse the data. So that's basically. So I think there's a few questions around that. But so value-free is the idea that you're objective. So like you're not putting your biases on, like you're neutral might be another way of saying it. I'm trying to think of other words for being objective.
Yeah.
And then value-laden is you've got biases, you've got a motive to do the research. What if you were to split this debate up even further for just the interest of it, is the idea you've got sociology is a science, is not a science, but there's also the idea that it can and can't be, as well as it should and shouldn't be. So even if it can be scientific, it shouldn't be scientific, because there's this idea of being value-laden is quite a good thing. Okay, so like the idea I think you mentioned earlier about rapport and that as well. So lots to unpack there. There's lots of different questions around social facts and Popper and Kung and them being besties and falsification. Maybe if we come back to some of those questions in a minute, but what I was going to say is the social fact is linked into the idea of science, and that normally associated with the idea that data is reliable and there's patterns and trends, and therefore the patterns and trends are so, going back to your full circle thing, so macro, therefore you can say that data is factual, basically.
Again, just a lot of these kind of are sort of almost opposites or near opposites. So social fact contrasts with social construct. Yeah. Okay, and there was a question there about policy, and so just for you, someone said, "Can you go over sociology perspectives influence on policy?" Just for you, go on, Craig.
Thank you. Yeah, I did notice a few people coming through different sociological perspectives on policy. And this is actually asking something slightly different. What we're looking at here is this kind of key debate, should sociology inform social policy? Now, this has come up as a question before. We're asked about how sociologists might view the purpose of social policy, but there's different ways in which it can be asked. So we've looked at this one, talking about the idea of should sociology inform social policy versus sociology should not inform social policy. So what I want you to do is give me a couple of ideas that suggest that sociology should and can inform social policy. And on the other side, we'll do that one first, and then we will look at why sociology should not inform policy. So let's start with, give me a few reasons why sociology should inform policy. When did they ask about policy? They have asked about it a couple of times over the time, but usually it's 10 markers. So should inform positivists and functionalists. Yes. Social democrats and realists. Excellent. Should not inform Marxists. We'll come back to that one. Use postmodernism as a conclusion. I'm assuming that's something else, yes?
I think that was answering a different question earlier on that someone asked.
Okay. Liberal feminist makes change in patriarchal structure. I like that one. Yes, that was definitely
someone's talked about
sociology should inform policy.
someone's talking about Giddens influencing Blair, so that's a good
Yeah.
example to use.
That is a very good example.
Nice one.
Sociology. Oh, sorry, we're going to sociology. Shouldn't inform feminists. Feminists have very different views on it. Let's just say based on their branches, but we'll come to that in a moment. To do positive and scientific, I think that may be for another question. New right should never be able to inform policy. You said it, Maddie, not me. Liberal feminist March of Progress. Okay, Murray influencing Thatcher. Yes, he did. Let's have a look at what we've put as sociology should inform policy. I've actually put the early positivists, and I've also put late modernists such as I did put late modernists such as Bowen and Giddens see sociology as uniquely being placed to investigate society, and therefore it should inform policy. Whereas early positivists suggested that the scientific study should lead to policy formation. Lots of those other answers, things like liberal feminism is correct. Social democratic approaches, well, they are very much influenced by Bowen and Giddens especially.
Third way, new right, lots of people coming up with really good examples of it.
Good.
But
so let's do the flip side now. Sociology should not inform policy. Why should sociology not inform policy?
I saw a few people earlier saying about Marxists and perhaps other types of feminists, so some more radical thinkers, they might think that it shouldn't because the government isn't going to do anything good. You need to be much more radical. Yeah, the state isn't. You need to smash the state. Oh, Mia, we haven't got a word smash today. I'm sorry. We're going to answer your questions instead. I'll do one next time.
That's 2 weeks in a row, no word smashed on.
I know.
You're letting your fans down, mate. Right,
okay. So Jess is... Oh, sorry.
We've got here, Marxists argue that a reformed society is undesirable if it does not make meaningful progress to eliminate inequality. The idea that most social policy actually serves the needs of the ruling class. Yeah, that's a good one.
Therefore, there should be a revolution. Yeah, there was a similar point about radical feminism. Yeah.
There's a good point there, that's now skipped by, but it was the idea that the new right want minimal state intervention. And I think that is a good point. But they do actually use social policy to reaffirm kind of individual responsibility. So, they interact in some way, but they do suggest that, we need to have minimal state intervention. If sociology did inform policy, governments wouldn't use it. If it didn't give them electoral popularity, that is a good point as well. Bowen suggested that sociology was uniquely placed in order to deal with the social issues that existed in society cost us. Marxist believe social policies only serve the government to maintain further exploitation of workforce. Hello.
Zamudio Terrazas has got an interesting one. My teacher said social problem. Oh, I've lost it now. Social problems are not the same as one thing and social issues is another. Yes, there's a difference between social problems and sociological problems.
The new right are involved. The new right are involved in social policy, but they believe in minimal state intervention. So as a consequence, they don't tend to. They try not to, but they do. They're very contradictory.
Yeah. They obviously massively influenced, like the Thatcher government and the Reagan government in America, for example.
Yes, there are a couple of points that people have made in there. Let's have a look at what we put.
I quite like that one about politics informing sociology rather than the other way around. That's quite an interesting one.
That is a nice one. Yeah,
social policy. That's interesting.
Yeah, social policy informed by think tanks
is a very good one. That's why it doesn't inform policy. Yes.
Okay. Oh, there's a question there about do we have a video on perspectives of influence on social policy? I'm sure we do. I'm sure Craig's done one. If you have a look for that.
Yes, we do. So the two things I've put in there, postmodern arguments, there's no single truth, and sociology is merely a commentary. And then not all sociological issues are social issues, which I think somebody mentioned in there as well. Interactions between individuals, they are. We look to observe those rather than actually formulate policy on them. Postmodernism does make me miserable too.
So I'm going to come back to the. I'm going to come back to the studio. Hi. Now there were lots of questions in there. I'm going to pick up a few of them, but you may well have seen other ones that I didn't. A lot of them were related, so I'm going to sort of pick up on some of the ones that were related. First of all, a lot of them are what could come up on as a 10 marker sort of thing. So, could there be a 10 marker on a specific social action theory? For example, could you get a 10 marker on labelling? In theory.
In theory, yes.
Yes. If you think about sort of action theories within that, if we talked about structural theories, you wouldn't be surprised to get a question about feminism or Marxism or functionalism. So on that basis, within kind of the broad range of action theories, you could get asked about ones within that. I don't think you'll get something really narrow. I hope. I hope you won't get anything really, really narrow. But yeah, in theory, you could. And sort of related to that, how could they ask us a 10 marker on social? Is that just like morally, how could they ask us? But no, I think you mean what sort of question could you get as a 10 marker on social action theories? Obviously, we know. I think there was one last year, wasn't there? A 20 marker on social action theories. What could a 10 marker look like?
Outline and explain 2 criticisms of social action perspectives.
Yeah.
Or outline and explain 2 ways social action perspectives are better suited to study in society today.
Yeah, and better than you could get a comparative one better than structural, or why structural are better than social action.
Or they might just go in with like an interactionist, so outline. Might look at outline explain 2 criticisms of the interactionist approach, and obviously so there's lots of ways around it, and also the labelling would be looking at social action as well.
So, do we need to know theories such as postmodernism for paper 1 AQA?
Are we thinking about it depends what part you're talking about there.
Globalization.
I think we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I think we're talking about the theory question, aren't we? I think
yes,
probably,
you could.
And you could.
Yeah.
So, I think basically anything in theory and method.
Again, I'm sure of it. I think
there has been. I think there has been.
There was.
It was a 10 marker one year on.
Yeah,
there was. Yeah, it was outlined and explained two ways. Sociologists can say that we're living in a postmodern age.
Yeah, literally anything in the theory and methods bit of the course could come in that 10 mark question on paper 1. Yeah, yeah, any aspect of it.
It's one of the issues that, like, I think with paper 1 is you're doing so much of your revision for paper 3 at the same time, because you're doing a lot of theory and method stuff in there, because anything could come up on that 10 marker that is in that whole section of theory and research methods.
Yeah, anything. I don't want to confuse people with ethnomethodology, but I did see quite a lot of people saying, "Oh, what is ethnomethodology?" Because a few people had mentioned it in the chat window. So should we just have a sort of brief bluffer's guide to ethnomethodology without sort of? I mean, essentially, or ethnography, ethnomethodology, is the study of a culture. It's often observations, isn't it? It's often that's how we tend to use it as just another term, but it's like kind of interactionist use of qualitative data from observations, that kind of thing. Would you agree? Yeah.
Well said, Duncan.
You're happy with that as a?
I always think of it being sort of rich data, really. That's why I think about it. Sort of very in-depth, qualitative, observational, attached rapport.
Yeah. Slightly more general one here. Do you have to explain keywords in the exam? I think either explain them or use them in such a way that it's clear that you understand them. So they won't always expect. Context. Yeah. So they wouldn't always expect you to see like a list of definitions type thing. That's not really what they're expecting. But you do want to demonstrate to the marker that you understand it. So one way of doing that is explaining the term, another is to use it correctly in the right context, and it's obvious that you understand it. Now, I'm sure there've been other questions coming in while I've been doing this. Oh well, lots of people are asking about the other one, phenomenology. Don't worry about it too much. I think.
If you don't know about phenomenology, at this point, there's probably a very good reason your teacher's not chosen to teach you, because it's not really that. It's not really. It's a form of interactionist theory, but it kind of comes under the broad banner of social action. Phenomenologists that you will have covered are people like Cicero. You may have done Douglas and Atkinson. So, like if you've done Durkheim's study of suicide. I would say it's basically the study of sociological phenomena, and that's where I would leave it.
Right. I have seen a few people in the chat window referring to 50 markers. I'm assuming that's for a different exam board. Don't worry about don't worry about 50 marks for the AQA level. It might be for a different qualification or whatever. If it's not for the paper 1 AQA. What's the difference between Marxists and neo-Marxists? Is it just that neo-Marxists are more modern? For example, the Glasgow Media Group, which is a good example of some neo-Marxism.
I'd say it's also their methodology as well. Like,
it's partly methodology.
Methodology, and I'd also say, go for it.
I was going to say it's the reaction. Is that when you look at traditional Marxists, it's their kind of reaction to traditional Marxism. So traditional Marxists thought that they would, obviously, like Marx would sort of like say there was going to be a revolution. And when we think about our two key neo-Marxists, they would say, well, that hasn't happened. So you got Gramsci and you got Althusser, and they look to explain why it hasn't happened. And so,
they both still wanted
in some ways, yes,
and
they both do, but they've kind of explained why it didn't happen. In different ways.
You could argue that Marx did as well, but it's absolutely it's reacting to it's often slightly more idea about, it's slightly less, well, it depends. There are different neo-Marxists are quite different. Like Gramsci is very different from Althusser in terms of explanations. One's much more structuralist, one's much more kind of what word do they use? Humanistic, I think. So different neo-Marxists are quite different from one another. I suppose they're all similar in that they are more modern. They're since Marx, and they're reacting to things that have happened in society since Marx, and therefore
I think it's the idea
making adjustments to traditional Marxism.
I think a lot of their work would be it's quite interesting, the idea of sort of class and how class consciousness has appeared to have changed around social mobility. Remember when Marx was talking, I was thinking like the best of times, the worst of times, right? Proper poverty, and now there isn't. So there's that sort of illusion. So it also deals with a different concept of class as well, of how we understand class. It isn't as simple as people have money and no money. So that's where the neo-Marxists come into explaining that sort of, I suppose, that relative autonomy and that false consciousness potentially.
Right. There's lots of people ask, I don't know, why are people talking about 60 markers? Sorry, this is really confusing me now. Anyway, I think possibly people are just deliberately trying to wind people up, maybe. Okay, there are some.
Do not.
No, there are some slightly unusual questions in there. No, there isn't a 70 marker. Okay, right. Let's stop there. Okay, so some people have sort of moved on to education type questions. We did education last week. Go back and watch it. I think we probably answered most likely answers in that, and some of the questions don't seem to be about sociology now, so I don't know whether people have started asking questions about their geography papers or their business papers, etc. People asking where we would align ourselves. I don't feel you don't need to know that for your paper one. But right, everyone's being very silly. Right, questions about predictions. We don't go there.
Don't predict.
We don't go there because you can't possibly predict. But obviously some teachers will say, "Oh well, this hasn't come up for a bit," and that's fine. Some stuff hasn't come up for a while, but there's no way of knowing. If you look back on past papers, sometimes they'll ask, a very similar question to the previous year. Sometimes it'll be something new. It might be the similar point but a different tariff, for example. So I don't think you can. I don't think you can say this is more likely to come up than that, really. I wouldn't anyway. I wouldn't like to.
No. And sociology is so synoptic, isn't it? That's the thing. That's what I keep... You're just laughing at the random sort of questions. But I was thinking... they're so synoptic. So everything you can use in one question, you can use in another question. So I think it's good to know your theory, basically, because you're going to need it across everything. You're distracted now, Duncan.
Yeah, I am. I'm being really distracted. There's lots of people saying, "What would you things?" When's the business one on? I don't know.
I feel like Duncan or I thought I'm labelling theory here. I feel like you may on another time may talk about the politics of the kebab, but probably not now.
The politics of the kebab, potentially. Is your Oh, it's all gone very strange on the chat window. Is your mark restricted if you don't mention a sociologist? I mean, I don't know quite in what context you mean.
I think names.
There's no negative marking. Okay. I think we talked about this last time, so I don't want to kind of go on too much about it. But you want to bring in some sociology, so that's probably studies, concepts, etc. The names are not the be all and end all. The names aren't the most important thing, but you do want to make sure that you bring in some sociology. It's not just a sort of common sense response that you could have potentially made without having studied sociology for 2 years. Okay, right. Lots of people asking about education, but this was a theory and methods one. And therefore, I saw one last night, it's disappeared. If I can find it, I'll add it to the screen. Otherwise, I'll just remember it. And then we will stop because we've been on for ages. I can't find it, but it was.
You've got to have your tea, Duncan, haven't you? You've got to have your tea.
I do need my tea. I can smell it. How would you structure theory and methods questions? Was one of the was one of the questions there. So, assuming we mean a 10 marker, yeah, you'll be asked for two something. Might be 2 ways, 2 reasons, 2 criticisms. Paragraph for each. Very clear point. It's all about the analysis. It's all about explaining that point. If you can illustrate it, so you can do some application as well. If you can illustrate it with that in reality, a real study or whatever, then that's brilliant. And I would say, I hope see if Katie and Craig would agree. You might not do. I would say it's better to, where you can, to illustrate it with a real study rather than kind of a hypothetical one. You sometimes see if someone were to do a an observation into this made up topic, this might be a problem. That's fine, but it'd be a better answer if you can say, there was a study into this, and this was a problem that actually happened in terms of a real sociological case rather than a sort of hypothetical one. Would you agree?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Was Craig frozen? I thought.
No, I'm not frozen. No. Yeah. I was waiting my turn. Yeah, I agree with you.
All right. Okay. We're done. Someone said, "Are you the man in the videos?" Craig's the man. Well, it depends which videos you mean, but it's probably Craig doing the voiceovers on the videos. So, yeah.
It just depends which videos you mean.
Right. Someone said, "When's Jim coming on?" Probably now. We're going to get off anyway. So thank you very much. Loads of really good questions. I hope we've answered as many of them as we possibly could. I hope we haven't caused any extra confusion and you're feeling all G'd up for your exam. Don't be too stressed about the theory and methods question for paper 1. Focus on your methods in context, where you've got 20 marks on that. 10 marks on theory or methods. Obviously, it's important to try and maximise your marks on that, but don't get into a real stress that you're not sure what phenomenology or whatever it is, or you haven't heard of a particular sociologist that someone's mentioned. That isn't something to worry about. Okay, we done. Cheers, guys. Someone's put there. We got this, guys. You have got this, guys.
You have.
Right.
You have. You've done really well tonight, by the way.
Absolutely.
You've done him so well.
Best of luck. And we'll be keeping an eye out on Twitter and stuff to see how everyone feels after the exam. I'm sure you'll come out happy. All right. Okay. See you guys. Bye.
You take care, lovelies. Bye.